Um, my film career started out, I was approached by my film professor in 2008, March 2008, about shooting a documentary in Zimbabwe. And I didn't know much about sub-Saharan Africa. There is a producer who spends half the year in the US and half the year in Zimbabwe. And in the half the year she was in Zimbabwe, her husband hosted an art gallery opening in the second city of Bulawayo, Zimbabwe. And at this gallery opening, they had hired a random band to perform, and this band was comprised completely of musicians with disabilities. And this producer and her husband were so blown away by this band that they thought it would be a great idea to do a documentary about them. The producer was friends with the head of the film department at the Maryland Institute College of Art, which is where I was studying at. And when she asked, hey, do you have any students who could shoot this film for us? My film professor recommended me. So my entire film career started from one recommendation. Luckily, I got the opportunity to, as soon as I graduated college, I was on a plane to Zimbabwe filming for 9 months. That film ended up winning an Oscar a couple months later, and it was, you have a moment when you're outside right after the acceptance, and you're standing next to Macaulay Culkin as he's smoking a cigarette, and you ask him, so what now? I'm 22 years old, and the first film that I shoot wins an Oscar. Where do you go from there? Because many people, they enter the film industry and they work for many years and many films to get to that point. They're 40, 50, 60 years old sometimes. I got one before Leo. Where do you go from there? Well, the thing is not necessarily to outdo yourself, but to do more amazing things in other the trick isn't necessarily to try to outdo yourself, but to be excellent in other fields and in other disciplines in the film industry. I branched out and started doing film producing. And film producing requires a lot more responsibility on the front end of a film, getting details together to carry a film from beginning to end. Then there is being a director of photography. I ended up, over the space of 4 years, I shot 14 documentaries and 2 fictional narrative films. So there's a huge imbalance there. And I wanted to do more fiction work. So I was brought onto a project in 2013, summer of 2013, to shoot a fictional short for an anti-bullying campaign. And that was where I got my first real taste of what it's like to go from being a documentary maker where you work on a small crew where all of the production roles are consolidated and 2 or 3 people have 5 different tasks that they have to complete, to moving to the fiction world where each person has one specialized role. And it teaches you a lot about delegation, and it can halfway through the filmmaking process, I started leaning back and I could get used to this. There's less pressure with, that's actually a lie. There's more pressure with narrative because you're dealing with a lot more personalities. But there's less pressure work-wise when it comes to how many tasks you're given to carry out. That was one of the major changes. I will say that going forward with the future films that I did after that first one won the Oscar, there was a certain bit of trust that many filmmakers had in me from the jump. When it comes to the filmmaking process, whether you're a director or a writer or a producer or a director of photography or a sound person, sometimes other people who are trying to hire you may be wary about your skill level, your experience, and your ability to follow through on a task from beginning to end. And having an accolade like a film that won an Oscar being on your resume does go quite a way, I will say that. It breaks down that initial barrier that some filmmakers may put up to safeguard themselves from bad filmmaking collaborations. Now, everyone in the filmmaking industry has had a bad collaboration with someone where you had good intentions, you hoped they had good intentions, they may have had good intentions, but something fell through. And creatively, there was a disconnect between you and the person you were collaborating with. And sometimes that disconnect, that bad experience may force a filmmaker to put up a brick wall for their future experiences. Fortunately, I haven't had many instances where another filmmaker who wanted to hire me had a brick wall up when they approached me because of the film accolades that I had leading up to meeting them. So yeah.